So, question for all those of you who've been following the rise of AI chatbots like ChatGPT and Bard. How many of you would like to have something like that built in and integrated into Avid Media Composer, helping you edit, picking out chunks, doing a lot of the automated work for you, all based on your own prompts and text responses to its questions? Well, based on a recent live video direct from Avid, looks like we'll be getting just that. Right, so first of all, let me back up a little bit and provide some context. On January 25th, there was a live Avid event, which was streamed live on YouTube. It's there now, you can go and watch it, there'll be a link down below, where representatives from Avid, Craig Wilson and Shailendra Mathur, went into detail about Avid's work in researching, developing and implementing AI in its products. There was a lot of discussion around the era of AI that we now live in, how Avid's employing it in their products, as well as the ethics and responsibilities and other concerns that people may have around things like security and limitations that AI should have and how much should it be allowed to do and keeping humans in the loop. Now, a lot of the video was, a lot of fancy phrases and terminology like knowledge management, conversational editing, prompt-based editing. But I think that's kind of because they don't want to overpromise anything just yet. They don't want to, promise some really big, huge feature without having a timeline of delivery or anything like that. So yeah, there was a lot of vague stuff, to protect themselves, and they were quite careful what they say. But we did get some demonstrations and a look at Avid's new AI chatbot, Ada. Throughout the video, there was discussions and small demonstrations in the background of Ada being used in a number of Avid's different applications, including Pro Tools, Sibelius, Media Central, and of course, Media Composer. Now at this point, I've watched this video all the way through a couple of times, and I've skimmed through it a few more times after that. So I'm going to try and give you the top highlights of the most exciting or interesting and promising aspects that were demonstrated and shown throughout the video, specifically in regards to Ada, Avid's chatbot. So one of the first examples of Ada that they did show was of the chatbot being employed on the website just to answer questions. This is sort of somewhere in between asking a seasoned and knowledgeable Avid veteran and your normal sort of super basic chatbots that you get with pre-scripted questions and responses. The chatbot has been trained and has full access to all of the product manuals of all of the applications, as well as all of the information contained across the forums and the website. And so, like with other things like Bing and ChatGPT-4, when you ask it a question, you're going to get contextual answers. It's not just going to be sending you a link to a web page with the user manual for covering that portion of what you're asking, or send you to a web page that will explain it. It can actually give you a contextual answer. So if you ask, how can I purchase Media Composer, or what plan would get me Media Composer and ScriptSync, it could give you a contextual human answer as if a person was answering this. And following on from that, Shailendra moved on to talking about Ada giving contextual answers within different apps of Avid. So if you were to ask, how do I ingest? Just that question phrased exactly like that, it would give you a different response whether you're in Media Composer or whether you're in Media Central or whether you're in Pro Tools. It knows what it is you're currently in and what you're thinking of doing. And so you don't always necessarily have to be hyper specific if Ada has some kind of awareness of the current situation, the current context. He's got Media Composer open, he's got a project open, he's probably talking about ingesting in Media Composer. Let's give him that answer. And then segueing through from that, following on very nicely from that idea, they revealed that Ada has access to both API code generation within all of Avid's apps, as well as Avid Media Composer's panel SDK, so it can potentially completely reconfigure applications when you ask. Now, the example that was given here was someone has Pro Tools open, but they haven't created a session yet, and they just go and they ask Ada, create a Pro Tools session for me, with these requirements and formatted like this. And then Ada goes and does that. And you would see the Pro Tools windows appearing in front of you in the arrangement that you have asked for. And this is the point where it was starting to get a bit exciting for me, because we're starting to see, the AI at work in terms of proactively doing things, as opposed to just being a little assistant like Siri, who's looking up some information and then feeding it back to you. it can proactively do things within Avid's apps. Now, in terms of talking about doing things within the apps, the question, of course, did come up about generative AI and the idea of generating video and generating imagery, which raised the whole conversation around, of course, the ethics of that and how much do you want to take away from the user. But the main reason why that wasn't being, shown as an example right now is because focusing on text, not just in terms of media management, but Ada recognizing text that's been spoken in a clip and then performing actions based on the knowledge of what's spoken has been the main focus for Avid to begin with. So there's been a lot of research and development has went into that. And this has been demonstrated already in Media Composer, as we've seen with PhraseFind and ScriptSync being replaced by PhraseFind AI and ScriptSync AI. And while these new iterations of PhraseFind and ScriptSync can seem extremely similar to the way it's always been for us, they did talk about some of the underlying technologies, what separates them, as well as demonstrating some new features that looks like they're coming imminently in the pipeline. For example, we recently did gain the ability to create a script from a clip. So we're able to export out a script that Avid has scanned all the audio. It can give us time-coded captions of everything that's said. But they also demonstrated in the video something that's not present yet in Media Composer, which is the ability to export out a subcap, which could then obviously be imported back into Media Composer as captions on your timeline. So this also suggests that we're able to use this create script, ScriptSync function on a timeline, on a sequence, as opposed to just on clips, which I think is how it currently works in Media Composer. And I know that is something that's going to make a big difference. And I'm well aware that it's a feature that's already present in some other applications, as well as automatic captions being a thing on platforms like YouTube, like where we are now. Thus far, Avid ScriptSync AI and scanning text, scanning speech, and typing up the text in a transcript, I've found to be extremely accurate. Definitely at least better than some of the automatic options on things like YouTube. And I've tested it on a number of different accents, using my family and friends as well, and it's held up pretty good. So in terms of generative AI, text and recognizing text and generating, those kinds of text files from the existing content that's there has been Avid's focus for the first while, but they haven't ruled out automatically generating imagery or video or sound at some point in the future. But moving on from that, the next part of the video that I want to talk about, I personally think they didn't devote enough time to. I think they kind of skimmed over this a little bit too quickly because it's going to be absolutely revolutionary when it does launch. And that was the idea of conversational editing. So in the example that was shown in the video, we have a number of clips. We're in some kind of comedy series or film or project. You're making a comedy. And you have asked Ada to go through the material and find me some funny bits. Now, not only is it, extremely impressive already that Ada could go through the clips and find specific sections and subclip them out for you and name them as well. So it can do all that automation as well, which was specifically mentioned and demonstrated. But the idea that an AI chatbot can recognize funny. Now, they did acknowledge that what the AI chatbot finds is funny and what you find is funny might be different. But if you were at a bit of a loss for material, or if you just wanted to get a first assembly edit up and running, and you were able to ask a question to Ada like this, or find me this type of moment, or even something a little bit less subjective, find me shots with mountains in the background, find me all the wide shots and subclip them, subclip out all the coverage of this particular character and dump it on a sequence. If we're able to do stuff like this simply with text prompts and requests to Ada, that could be a serious game changer in terms of efficiency in editing, saving Avid editors a lot of time going through material. Now, I personally have a bit of a slower method when I like to cut. I like to watch everything wherever possible. And some stuff like the example that they showed of, find me the funny bits, and Ada presented him with several options and a little description of these funny bits. I do find a little bit unnerving, and it does rub me the wrong way a little bit, if I'm being perfectly honest. So that particular example doesn't excite me too much, because even if it worked, there's, like it was acknowledged in the video, there's lots of different types of funny, and I think if there was a number of users, even just 30-40% of Avid users ended up using this on the regular and relying upon it, you might sort of see the types of funny bits that are used in long form projects end up being the same or similar, as they're always being presented with the same suggestions for funny bits. I would much rather it was left up to the individual Avid user to do all the creative and to build the story and to choose the right bits. But again, it was more about what that request and what that example represented for me. If a lot of the mundane tasks and things that I do in Media Composer all the time could be done in seconds by Ada automatically, this could save me so much time. Or my assistants, this could save so much time for assistant editors. Say a task like adding action markers, adding a marker to the point of action at the beginning of a subclip. As the assistant, you could create your scene bin, you've got everything ready, and then you could just ask Ada to go through all the clips and drop a marker 1 second before action is called at the beginning of the take. And if Ada could just go through and do all of that, how much time would that free your assistant up to then go and do other things? And now, while this section was, of course, the highlight of the video for me, the video didn't end there. They went on to talk about knowledge management, which was their way of describing a process of automatically cataloging clips and automatically cross-referencing them all together so that both you and Ada would have very quick access to them. So like a few several steps beyond just strong metadata management. And this is going a bit beyond Media Composer. Unfortunately, a lot of the examples they showed were in Media Central. But one really cool example that they gave, both showing Ada's abilities and showing all of this, knowledge management. They had all of this footage, hours and hours of footage of sort of political speeches and, President Biden talking about different things. And the user asks Ada to find me the portion where Biden talks about inflation. And because in the background, PhraseFind indexing has been text cataloging everything that's been spoken, and it's also able to do facial recognition, it knows who Biden is, it can find those clips where Biden has mentioned inflation and then just present you with those sections. This could be an absolutely massive game changer for unscripted workflows. If you have hours and hours and hours of footage that you just don't have time to go through all of it, when you're trying to build a specific story beat for a documentary, or you're trying to pivot and tell a new kind of story that you haven't prepped for, you can just ask Ada to go and find you something very specific, and Ada has access to all this knowledge and metadata and all of this other catalog data in the background to present you with exactly what you had requested and exactly what you're looking for in a timely manner. The speakers had referenced this as something called contextual discovery, which is kind of a term that you might be familiar with if you have been following these AI chatbots in general. The general principle of all of this is that you should be able to make requests and ask for things in a more contextual, more natural language way, like an editor would just ask an assistant. You should be able to ask Ada. So it's like you're talking to another human. You can ask it in context. Hey, can you go and find me, that bit where this person said this, and then subclip it into this bin for me? And it can go and do that, rather than just presenting you back with text referenced from that specific question. Now, after the speakers had talked at length about AI and the ethics and responsibilities and all of the different examples and the type of things that Ada can do and will do, there was also a Q&A at the end where Craig had presented Shailendra with a number of questions that had been pre-prepared for him to answer. Now again, because both of these speakers are working for Avid, I got the impression that these questions were quite pre-prepared. They were, I don't want to use the term scripted, because it did seem like Shailendra was genuinely trying to answer them as he was asking, but they had definitely been vetted through with Avid and had been chosen to put a best foot forward that Avid wants to show. They weren't, the type of questions that I think a lot of users and audience members watching this live stream would have wanted to ask and would have wanted answered. Things like, what's the timeline for release? When will we start to see this in Media Composer? How much will it specifically be able to do? What's the plans for it for the future? Will all the examples that you showed in Media Central be relegated only to Media Central, or will we get that in Media Composer as well? What are we actually getting, and when are we getting it? Unfortunately, for all of those kind of questions, we're just going to have to wait and see. But Avid's been openly talking about AI for the last good while, I'd say about 8 months now. And Avid's biggest release of the year is generally the first one in the Q1 of the year. So potentially we could maybe see some of this release in, March time in an Media Composer 2024.3, something like that. Fingers crossed. Since unlike some of the stuff that we've got in the last year or two from Avid, this does really seem like an exciting new toy to play with that could open up whole new avenues and whole new possibilities in terms of how we use the platform. We're not just getting, battery import put back, for example, like old features just added back in, or tiny little things, which are greatly appreciated, but they're not exactly groundbreaking in comparison to what other platforms are doing. Now, I don't say that as a huge criticism of Avid. I generally respect the whole slower approach to finesse technologies before release, and they've probably taken that to great heart after the release of things like Titler Plus and Avid on Macs and silicon chips didn't exactly go super smoothly. I think they've probably slowed the release of big features right down after that. But at the same time, it's just really cool to see something exciting, something edgy come from Avid, and can't wait to get my hands on it. And as soon as I do, you can bet there'll be a video of me playing with it and showing, what we can do with it up on the channel somewhere. But in the meantime, I do have to get back to my good old 2023.12 AI-less Media Composer to finish an edit. So I will see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.